Hi guys. Well, let's see if I can get y'all caught up with Beowulf. So today's going to be a really short video. So just to start out with, this is the text that we're using. On the screen, you'll notice it says right here, Beowulf, Seamus Heaney. So there he is, Seamus Heaney. With this text, the PDF I have out here, it does not have it set up by page number. I think I've already told you this. It actually has it set up by line number. So I'll be giving you a breakdown as we move further into the week of the lines we will be covering. There are sections that I will skip for timing and consistency. But for the most part, we are reading the complete epic of Beowulf. It's almost open as we speak. It's a little slow today. Okay, cancel. And it's thinking. Okay, so you see it's by line number and not by page number. So just to confirm that for you. Okay. Therefore, that's the opening page as I have on the screen. Okay. Going back now to some information I want to cover before we get into the actual story itself. There are literary elements I need to be sure you understand that are being used within the text. There, the text itself. So these essential terms or document you may have already opened yesterday. As I mentioned in the folder itself, some of these you already know, they've been discussed with you ever since 9th grade. So when this opens up, I will make it full screen. Here we go. Okay, so of the terms here, you already know what an epic is. You know what an epic hero is. Okay, you should know what the heroic code is. Okay, the trials and tribulations for the greater good. All heroes go through a heroic quest. Otherwise, you would not have an epic. Okay, so moving forward, the items, like I said, that are highlighted are the more important ones. So in this particular case, an invocation. This is when the poet will call upon a deity, or for the Greeks, they call upon a muse, a goddess of inspiration. Sometimes in epics, the poet calls upon a natural element, but it's all about asking for outside help to help retell the story. In the case of Beowulf, critics have said the invocation is actually addressing the audience. So when that happens, we'll on the next video, I'll point that out to you. The other thing of importance, the keening, or the kenning. It's an elaborate epithet. So you know what a metaphor is. We've talked about epithets in the past. These epithets are more decorative, they're more creative, they're more intense. The good way of spotting an Anglo-Saxon kenning is to see the hyphen. Okay, it's usually going to be two words slammed together as a compound structure, and it can be used to replace a specific person's name, a place, an element, or historical event. The three here I have listed under number 12. These three are used frequently within the actual text. So this first one you may think is a pun off the word railroad. I'm talking about something completely different. A whale road, that is the ocean. So a road for the whales to travel on. The society for the Anglo-Saxons is extremely based on water, on the ocean. England is an island after all, so is Ireland. So they picked up on this concept from the Denmark, Finland, and Norway region. The Vikings of Norse origin brought a lot of these traditions down into England. So it's really important to see a parallel going on between the Norse logic and the beginning English logic. A peace weaver, I'll be explaining in just a second, but highborn, that means somebody of nobility. Okay. Just to take this up another step, on number 13, item 13, for epithets, I took a line from the text itself. The life-bestowing wielder of glory granted them his blessing. What I've underlined here, wielder of glory, that is an official epithet. That is describing God. Life bestowing, on the other hand, is actually a kenning. And this is, again, two words brought together with a hyphen, compound structure. So the takeaway from this example, not every epithet is a kenning, but every kenning is an epithet. Okay? So in this case, wielder of glory is not the kenning. Life bestowing is the kenning. But they both serve as an epithet. Okay. Item 14, atheling. You'll see this term pop up every so often. It's a prince. Most importantly, it's someone who is next in line to become king. So it's all based on hereditary. The oldest son is an atheling. If he should die, the next son in line will become king, and he would be an atheling. The society that produced Beowulf is extremely community focused. It is extremely focused on hereditary and ancestry. You'll see these terms popping up quite frequently in the text. Whereas Gilgamesh is more concerned with just the solo hero, the one person, Beowulf is more about a community, the structure of the society that helps Beowulf become the hero. Again, as we go through the text, I'll point these ideas out to you. Okay, but this is just one small example. The atheling, the emphasis is on hereditary. Some of you may have heard of mead, number 15. That is a honey beer. You can actually get some in the modern era. It tastes sweet, and it's a thick beer, but it's still available. And that's mentioned quite frequently throughout the text. And of course, if you're drinking mead, you would be drinking it in a mead hall. It's a communal property set up for eating and celebrations. In the Nordic tradition and the Old English tradition, there was no private eating in your own house. You would go to a public location. If you've ever seen the animated film How to Train Your Dragon, the main character, Hiccup, I think his name is, he, at one time in the first film, is forced out of punishment to clean up the mead hall. So it's just like a cafeteria setting. The whole community gathers there to enjoy the company and eat and drink together. Okay. Number 17, a skop. This is based off the Old Norse word skald. So again, Norse refers to the Norwegians, the Denmark, the Finnish, that whole region on the globe. So a skop refers to a poet. The word should appear, he's like a minstrel, a gentleman who's traveling village to village to make a living. And he creates his own verses. He creates his own songs. Yeah, here's the word minstrel. The skop was somebody who did not understand writing. He's illiterate. Most of at this period, for 1,000 years, the skops were traveling and singing songs that they've created and memorized. And they're teaching the songs to their apprentices or to the next generation. And they memorize it and teach to the next generation, so forth and so on. These songs are filled with mnemonic devices. Examples are alliteration and the rhythms and the rhymes in some categories that help the mental process of storing the full epic in their heads. Alliteration, you may remember, is when you have the repetition of consonant sounds. So at any rate, the skop, again, is the original creator of the text. So in the particular instance of Beowulf, someone along the line created the work, recited it, memorized it, and performed it as he traveled village to village. Now, on the other hand, a scribe, number 18, that's a person who writes down material, who transcribes material. In the case of Beowulf, there is a monk around the 1000s who actually recorded Beowulf. Now, there's multiple ways of viewing this monk. Either he's transcribing the text from a skop who's sitting across from him, reciting it to him, or the monk is scribing it from memory of his own childhood when he heard the poem performed. Or again, he may have been a skop at one time before he took on the clerical profession. So what this means is there is a steady balance in the whole text. Oftentimes when you'll have a pagan reference, a Nordic pagan concept, like an elf or a giant or a dragon mentioned, it'll be counterbalanced with a Catholic element. Or the monk often will mention God frequently throughout the text. Again, when it pops up, I'll point those out to you. I'm skipping item 19. That's going in too in depth for the purposes of the course. Now, however, number 20, a caesura. This is another mnemonic device. So just going by how I have it written here, it's a visual space between, it's a visual space within a line of text. Okay? So as far as this is concerned, let me show you a visual. This is going to take a second because I'm going to have to jump onto Google. And then hit images. Okay, so what I found is right here an example of caesura. You see these gaps? These are the caesuras in the middle of the lines. And typically it's based on a pause when we naturally breathe. So it's supposed to be around 2 or 3 beats, then you pause, and then you have 2 or 3 beats after. In this example, it's not exactly perfect to the count, but you have then the scalding warrior, savage and grim, seized the ring hilt and swung the sword. These pauses build up a rhythm and help the scop, understand and recall where he is in the text. So that's how that works. I will have better examples as we go along, again, in the near future. So don't worry about the definition for foot. Alliteration, on the other hand, is the repetition of sounds. So the example I have here, it's the consonant in the beginning of the letters. The beginning of the words. The western wind blows tonight wildly. So the official alliteration, western wind wildly. But the W that's included at the end of the word blows, that actually works as well. Okay, but typically it's at the beginning of the word. The other thing of major importance, blank verse, that's what the text of Beowulf is presented in. Beowulf is blank verse. It means it's unrhymed. So even the translation that Seamus Heaney is doing, taking Old English, putting it in modern English, it's unrhymed, and it's set in what is termed iambic pentameter. So Shakespeare wrote his plays in iambic pentameter for the most part. His sonnets, same thing, iambic pentameter. Long narrative poems tend to use iambic pentameter. There's a belief we naturally spoke in iambic pentameter back in the medieval time period. And it is suitable for chanting. It's a natural pulse, let's say, for a speaking voice. And it mimics, in a manner of speaking, the heartbeat. So you're going dun 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 dun. The classic example of iambic pentameter is from Shakespeare. It's the line, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" So notice I'm stressing it more. It's not as natural sounding, but that's the iambic beat. 5 pulses in a line. Okay. Now 24, a peace weaver. This is another major example of a kenning, and a peace weaver is from the Anglo-Saxon tradition. When you have 2 tribes or 2 clans, 2 kingdoms in the middle of a war, and they've reached the point where they want to create a treaty, oftentimes a peace weaver or a young daughter of one side of the war would be sent over to the other side to marry into the family as an offering. It can be glamorized in poetry, but it is a very harsh life, and you can imagine the type of dramatic situations that could come out of it, of being forced to marry into a family you were once at war with. But ideally what it comes down to, the daughter marrying into another family would have children, and the bloodline would be connected to her family and the in-laws, and therefore you wouldn't want to cause further conflict with that new relationship. And that's where the peace is being woven together through the daughter. Okay, we have two more left. Thane, you'll hear that word frequently. It is like a knight. It is a warrior companion. Technically, Enkidu was a Thane to Gilgamesh. Okay, Beowulf is a Thane to his community. Okay. Finally, we got the word weird. So this does not mean eccentric, does not mean different. Weird, sometimes spelled W-Y-R-D, is another word for destiny or fate. Weird is a Nordic concept, and the Anglo-Saxon verse picked up on it. And it's tied to pagan system of belief. So one's weird is what's controlling your life. If you've read Macbeth, in Macbeth, there are three witches, and the three witches are referred to as the three weird sisters. So it's not implying that they are strange or eccentric. It's saying they are controlling the fate of the characters. So the other thing to keep in mind, this is a major part of the fatalism universe that we talked about way back in the early weeks of the course. The Anglo-Saxons believed God has a firm control over everyone's destiny, and that would be the weird. So at one time it was personified as a female figure, but by the time the Anglo-Saxons got a hold of it, it was more, when they became Catholic-based, it's more tied into the Christian God concept. Okay, so those are essential terms that you'll need to keep in your head and use within the papers and the discussions as we go along. One other quick thing I should stress, now that I think about it, when you see the word scope and scribe, okay, the narrator of the Beowulf text is telling you, the audience, story. Okay, so the narrator is representing the scope or the scope of this situation, okay, of the story. So you got Seamus Heaney as the translator, whose narrator is the scope. When you listen to the audio version, Heaney is representing himself as the scope. Okay, so you've got this multi-leveled concept going on with your own personal interpretation of the performance. So it makes it more intense knowing Heaney translated the text and he is reciting it to you. It's important that you make that connection that he is acting as in the old tradition of the scope. Okay. So I'll close that for now. As I've been saying for all these videos, if you have any questions, just let me know. And we'll have another video shortly. So be safe.